So, ladies and gentlemen, I am Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. I'm very glad to be with you today and to be with you at the fine facilities of Metro Interfaith, one of our outstanding housing counseling programs, funded as a part of our HOPP program, which is identified there, which we'll be talking about today. And I appreciate the folks at Metro Interfaith having us here. I'd also like to acknowledge Matt Schreck is here from the Legal Aid Society of Mid-New York, which provides legal services here in Binghamton and is also a funded agency under the Attorney General's HOPP program. We are honored to have with us your new mayor, Richard David, who knows firsthand the problems of foreclosures and vacant properties and the problems they create for whole neighborhoods. We very much look forward to working with you and to working with the entire community to make it a safer, stronger, and richer place for all its residents. And finally, a longtime friend of mine, Assemblymember Donna Lupardo, who's been an outstanding leader for this community in Albany. I've known her for a long time and couldn't be happier. Thank you for being here with us for this announcement. Let's see. I also have Conan Smith here, Housing Counseling Coordinator at Metro Faith, and I think Conan's been here for 15 years? Correct. 15 years, and we very much want to keep our focus on actually delivering services to real people in our remarks today and in the programs that we are talking about and the programs we're implementing. We have been providing, through organizations like Metro Interfaith, services to low and moderate income families for a long time. Metro Interfaith launched its housing counseling program in 1972, so they have a lot of experience doing this. But we're here today to announce that our office is going to be expanding our support for Metro Interfaith's work and for other agencies like this. No, there's no agency quite like this, but other agencies performing similar services all across the state of New York. We are here today to talk about two interrelated challenges facing Binghamton and other communities in our state. First is the devastating impact the collapse of the housing market and the foreclosure crisis and the problem of people trying to stay in their homes is still causing. And a lot of people think that the 2008 crash is over. It's not. The ripples live on, and there are tens of thousands of New York families who are still suffering because of that crash. And then the interrelated problem, it has to do with the really explosion of the number of vacant properties in communities across the state. So I've been working since I first took office on these issues. The collapse of the housing market became a particular focus of mine and interest of mine, and I recognized that when I was taking office, New York families were in trouble. New York was in trouble, and that there had not really been enough of an effort by anyone in the whole United States to really hold accountable those who had caused the collapse of the economy and to get them to provide relief for those who are harmed by the collapse of the economy. So one of the first things we did, recognizing that the legal services funds had been cut severely because of the fiscal crisis, we needed to fund legal services and housing counseling. The first settlement we got went to set up our HOPP program, and my commitment to you is that no New York family should ever lose their home because they can't get to a lawyer. When I took office, 345,000 families, 345,000 New York families were facing foreclosure, and half did not have a chance ever to talk to a lawyer or a housing counselor. So we're working with the programs we set up, and I'm also proud to have proposed in the last week or so 2 bills in this year's legislative session that would provide communities in the southern tier and across our state more tools to tackle these two interrelated problems. Now, in 2008, when the housing bubble crashed, I don't think a lot of folks realize this, but $7.4 trillion in home equity was destroyed. $7.4 trillion. The wealth of the American middle class was in the equity in their homes. This is what folks were planning to retire on, to send their grandchildren to school, and that was wiped out. Here in New York, the crash came on top of an already weak economy in a lot of parts of the state, which made it even harder for families and communities to get back on their feet. And in too many communities, as I travel around the state, while I was first running for office and now moving around between my 13 regional offices, you see neighborhoods after neighborhoods all over the state that just have abandoned properties the properties are bringing down the entire community. And that's something that I'm committed to resolving also. So Broome County, you should know, has more foreclosures than any other county in the southern tier. So the folks here understand this. You have a lot of abandoned homes that become magnets for vandalism and crime, dragging down property values of the neighborhood. They drain municipal coffers and erode the tax base, and they force the town to spend money they can't spare, making sure that the houses aren't going to fall down. My office has worked, first of all, to hold the banks accountable who caused this problem. So the first principle here is this was not people call this a perfect storm. This was not a storm. This was not an earthquake. This was a man-made crisis. There was some reckless deregulation, and then a relatively small number of people in financial services brought about the crash of the housing market. So as I pursued the banks, and then the federal government decided they wanted to do it with me, and the president put me in charge of a task force so that the Justice Department and other agencies would work with us, we started to get real results. We've secured hundreds of millions of dollars for New York State in settlements with the banks, and we have been putting that money to good use. The Homeowner Protection Program, which was the first initiative we set up, was a success from the first day we opened that places like Metro Interfaith and other centers opened their doors with more resources for housing counselors and lawyers. We set up a network so that no New York family would ever be without a lawyer or a housing counselor, and we are now expanded. We're funding over 90 different programs all across the state of New York. And I'm proud to announce today that the report on our first 15 months of the HOPP programs since October 2012, our service providers, including our hosts here today, have assisted 24,000 homeowners across the state. These are New York families who otherwise would have had no help. 6,600 of those families already have received mortgage modifications or have them pending. There are more on the way, and there's other relief that has been provided to those families. HOPP grantees have provided here in the southern tier assistance to 684 families already, and 161 of them have already gotten mortgage modifications. So this is a real program affecting real people right here. We have shown, by the way we've handled this in New York, that if you're smart, you can make the money go a long way. When we first entered into the National Mortgage Servicing Settlement, the people at Housing and Urban Development at HUD projected that New York families would realize about $600 million worth of mortgage write-downs and rate reductions. Because of the work our great HOPP network has done, New Yorkers in the first year of that program received $2 billion in mortgage write-downs because there are people who just can't deal with the bureaucracy of a bank, much less the court process, by themselves. New Yorkers have housing counselors, they have lawyers. We are making sure a higher portion of our people get access to whatever programs are available, whether it's a government program or a bank write-down program that we're forced them to make available. Our people are doing better. We are going to continue to expand our funding for the HOPP network so that no New Yorker ever has to go through this process. Again, I have to mention that we do have a problem with folks not taking advantage of our HOPP network. We still see people going into court by themselves or going in to talk to banks by themselves. So we do need to have additional outreach and from our partners in state and local government. We're working on that problem now. So let me say something about land banks. As I mentioned, abandoned properties are not just a problem for the family that lost its home. They are property. Abandoned property is a problem for the entire community. Now, we have given out already close to $13 million to 8 land banks. The legislation was passed. One of the lead sponsors was our assembly member here. And we have a land bank in Broome County, one in Chautauqua County, and we've committed to distributing at least a minimum of $7 million through a competitive bidding process this summer. It's all completely transparent. Folks get together and write proposals, and the money goes to them. I'm also proud to announce today that the legislation we introduced last week to expand the number of land banks from 10 to 20. Right now there's a cap, but there are, since we were able to get some funding for these programs, There's no reason not to have more of them around the state of New York. So I hope we'll be able to pass that during this year's legislative session. And the second bill I proposed last week addresses another important aspect of this problem, what are called zombie mortgages. Now, this is not something my daughter and her friends made up because she's somewhat obsessed with zombies at this point in her life. But they really are called zombie mortgages. They are homes that the residents abandon after they're served with a foreclosure notice, but then the foreclosure hasn't taken place. So under the current law, we can't make the bank take care of the property until the foreclosures, which can take years. So this legislation would force the bank in these circumstances to start taking care of it earlier. And this is something that is required already under every mortgage issued by Freddie and Fannie and the other government agencies. This is not a new idea. This is something that's been done before, and we can do it in New York State for private mortgages as well as government-backed mortgages. Now, if we're able to help keep New Yorkers in their homes, if we're able to help people who are very close to having enough credit to buy a home get credit, and these are all things that we want to do through our HOPP network, we can start to look towards a much brighter future here in Binghamton and across the state. And if we can give our local governments the ability to buy abandoned buildings, abandoned houses, rehab them for resale, for sale, or for rental, or in some cases just clear it out, deed the property to the house next door so it gets back on the tax rolls. Some places they're making parks. We believe in giving our local governments the ability and the flexibility to help turn cities like Binghamton around. We're looking for the future. We're looking towards a much brighter future. We believe that the folks who caused the crash of America's housing market now should be held accountable. And one by one, I think they're going to be contributing to this effort. And I'm determined that as much of this money as possible gets to the people in our communities who are hurt and who need relief. Thank you very much. And now I want to turn the podium over to Mayor David.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to our Attorney General for visiting the Southern Tier this afternoon. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here. From the city's standpoint, there's a number of positives and benefits to this sort of initiative. Certainly, as Binghamton, as an aging community, we have a variety of homes that are dilapidated, vacant, abandoned, in various stages of disrepair. And one of the primary concerns is that by the time an abandoned property gets into the hands of the city or county, oftentimes it is beyond the state where it can be rehabilitated in a very cost-effective manner. So that leads to blight, that leads to boarded up properties, and the result oftentimes is demolition to remove the blight in many of these neighborhoods. And obviously when that happens, what you're left with is a vacant lot. And the lot may be of benefit to some of the surrounding homes in a clustered area. Maybe you can parcel these vacant lots together for a larger footprint. But obviously the goal here is to keep individuals in their homes or to get these properties, new homeowners, new residents, keep these properties on the tax rolls, rehabilitate these properties. Because obviously, if there is a property on a piece of land and there's a family living in them, that is the best use for these sorts of properties. And people who are very familiar with this process, as the Attorney General very eloquently outlined, it can be a very time-consuming labor-intensive process. And so there's a lot of legal wrangling back and forth. And by the amount of time that takes place, sometimes these properties deteriorate. And so the goal here is to try to create some sort of a stopgap where these properties are preserved, they're protected, they stay on the tax rolls, and obviously there are families living in them. So from the city standpoint, this is very beneficial. And it's nice that you recognize the problem and you're taking action not only to do something about it, but to hold people accountable who play a role in properties deteriorating in this sort of fashion. And the other thing that I'd like to highlight is the fact that Broome County is fortunate to have a land bank. That is a significant benefit because many of these properties are very strategic in value, and the goal is not necessarily to auction properties off all the time and just get the most money for a piece of land. We want to collectively bring these properties under one umbrella and talk about what is the best use for the community. What is the most strategic use? How can these properties be put back on the tax rolls in a way that leverage private investment, create jobs, and better the community? So I've often talked about the variety of tools that cities have available to them. And I view the land bank and this initiative that the Attorney General is talking about and highlighting today is additional tools in the city's toolbox to increase home ownership, to combat blight, to make a positive impact not only on this community, but in many communities across the state. So it's something I look forward to supporting and seeing come to fruition very shortly. And I thank the Attorney General for his efforts.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you. And now someone who I've worked with for quite a while on a lot of issues, and I'm very honored once again to be working with her on this one, Assemblywoman Lupardo. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to add a few words to what has already been said. It's nice when all the levers of government are working together. And this is a perfect example when we have someone from the city and from the state and the state legislature all committed to doing the same thing, and from different parties, I might add, which makes it even better. What it means is that all of our constituents and all of our neighbors who have been so troubled for so many years, not only because of the economic collapse that we have faced, but the effect of so many devastating floods. As you know, some of the properties have been taken off the tax rolls entirely and been bought out and put back to green space. But some of these zombie mortgages and some of these other properties have really been abandoned because of those changes as well. You know, when we came up with the land bank process, we never dreamed that the type of resource would be available to help fund the land banks. I worked very closely with my other colleagues in urban centers across upstate, particularly Buffalo and Rochester, Syracuse, who are facing these large-scale tracts of properties and neighbors and abandoned homes that we wanted to, as the mayor mentioned, consciously figure out what to do with. So now that we have an opportunity to expand it to 20 land banks is even better for other parts of the state. So I just want to say thank you, Attorney General. I'm happy you're here. I'm happy that people are learning about the work that you've done. You can choose the topics that you want to work on. And this is such a valuable one for all of us. So speaking on behalf of my constituents in the 123rd Assembly District and all of our neighbors across the Southern Tier, thank you for working on this one and all of the pieces that you have working together, and all of us committed to working with you at every level to get it done, to protect our homeowners, make our neighborhoods safer for everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. And finally, Conan Smith of Metro Interfaith is going to close and talk a little bit more about the programs they've got underway.
Good afternoon. Housing counseling provides individuals with resources, education, and access to safe, decent, and affordable housing within the Southern Tier community. We have provided these services free of charge for over 40 years, beginning in 1972. As part of our commitment to assist individuals with housing issues, Metro Interfaith Housing Counseling has always offered foreclosure prevention assistance to help homeowners who are in distress and in threat of losing their homes to foreclosure. With the tireless efforts of our New York State Attorney General, General Schneiderman, we have been able to expand this much needed service to more distressed homeowners within Broome, Shenango, Delaware, and Tioga counties. Through the HOPP, or Homeowner Protection Program, this program provides funding to our agency, which allows us to continue providing expanded foreclosure prevention services. In the last 4 years, Metro Interfaith housing counselors have worked with over 1,000 total clients. 1/3 of our caseload have been clients in need of mortgage default or foreclosure prevention counseling. In April of 2013, we had a single mother of 3 who fell behind on her mortgage payments due to health, medical issues, and a loss of income. This client didn't reach out to our agency for help until she was 22 months behind on her mortgage with Bank of America and was pending foreclosure. Through our efforts and assistance, she was approved for a trial modification within 17 days of meeting with our counselor. She is currently successfully completing her trial modification, which will lead to a permanent modification. The impact on the Southern Tier region caused by homeowners who default on their mortgage is difficult to measure. It is important to understand that not only is there a personal financial impact on the household itself, but also a community impact of lower property values, higher property taxes, decreased retail revenues, and potentially an increase in homelessness. With the financial commitment and support of the Attorney General and his staff, housing counselors across New York State will be able to continue the hard work of assisting those homeowners who have no legitimate alternative to turn to. Thank you.
Thank you.